As some of you saw last year, I did a top 25 countdown video for my favorite roller coasters of 2021, meaning I ranked the ones that I rode in 2021. The video ended up coming out a bit late in March of 2022 instead. This time, I am doing the same thing, but ranking the coasters that I have ridden since the end of 2022. This also includes coasters that I haven't ridden in only 2022, but also rode in years before that, but it does include all the new credits I got in 2022. Hope that makes sense. I've pretty much ridden every coaster on this list in the year of 2022, so I have a very fresh memory and perspective of all the rides and the experiences those coasters delivered. Just a note, I have not been to Carowinds, Dollywood, or Silver Dollar City. The last time I've been to the parks in California was a long time ago, so I don't remember those ride experiences as much. Enough with the talking, and without further ado, let's get into the list. Number 25, Storm Chaser at Kentucky Kingdom. Although this is technically my least favorite RMC I've ridden, it still makes the number 25th spot on the countdown for a reason. The only thing this ride delivers is airtime, and that is literally the only thing. Yes, there is some minor hang time on the twisted barrel roll drop, but I barely felt that. The real bite to this ride is that insane, aggressive ejector airtime and the type of lap bars that try to stop the airtime during the ride, or lack thereof. It absolutely amazes me how this RMC coaster has lap bars that can't even touch your thighs at all, compared to every other RMC, where the lap bar mostly rests firmly against your legs throughout the entire ride. How is this even legal? Even if you try to rest your lap bar firmly to your legs on Storm Chaser, you will not succeed. The resting position of the lap bar on Storm Chaser is a couple inches above your thighs, and the only way to get it to rest on your thighs the entire ride is if you hold it there tightly. On every airtime moment, I found myself literally fully standing up on every single moment. The camelback after the drop is no exception, with its scary sustained ejector airtime that feels like you're about to be launched right into the airport. Every other airtime hill on this ride absolutely slams your thighs against the lap bar, even with the lap bar hovering above your thighs. The only downside to this coaster is that every other twist, turn, inversion, and overbank didn't pull any forces for me, but the violent, aggressive ejector airtime mixed with the minimalistic restraints is what makes this ride more than worth it in my opinion. Number 24, Sandy's Blasting Bronco at American Dreams Nickelodeon Universe. I know you guys probably expected this to be higher on the list, especially considering how obsessed I am with this ride and the park, but it just doesn't live up compared to the top 15 and 10 roller coasters I have on this list. This is currently my most ridden roller coaster. The forwards and backwards launches are among one of the best out there when it comes to LSMs, and the backwards launch is definitely the most powerful backwards launch I've ever experienced. There's also another surprise if you're sitting in the front row right side. During the backwards section while the train exits the second implement, you get violently thrown to the side, almost on par with the laterals and Skyrush. Overall, for this ride's size and the park it's at, it's a perfect addition and delivers a perfect amount of thrills. Number 23, Mako at SeaWorld Orlando. Compared to my list last year, this may seem a bit low compared to where I placed it last year, but when I rode Mako this year, it wasn't as insane as I remembered it, and although I do consider it the best B&M hyper, it's not too drastically different compared to other B&M hypers. The drop is still the best out of any B&M hyper, and the speed hill is definitely the strongest bit of airtime I've felt on a B&M hyper. Number 22, Kingda Ka at Six Flags Great Adventure. This coaster has dropped significantly in my ranking since I've rode it over the course of 2022. In the beginning of this year, it was running perfectly with the perfect amount of roughness, making the ride experience feel even more insane. The reason it dropped so dramatically is because of the way the park has been maintaining the ride. The hydraulic launch is still amazing as always, but the pullout into the top hat has become significantly shakier, actually getting to the point where it's deteriorating the ride experience. That aside, the launch is still absolutely insane, and the ride is insanely intense as always. I always look forward to riding this every time I go to Great Adventure. Number 21, Orion at Kings Island. This is like Candemonium, but just a bigger and better version of it. This is by far the best B&M drop I've ever experienced, and is the only Giga coaster I've been on by the manufacturer. The wave turn gives surprisingly strong laterals, the helix pulls surprising positive G-forces for a B&M, and the last airtime pop before the brake run actually delivers legit ejector airtime. Number 20, Lightning Run at Kentucky Kingdom. The day I went, the park was empty, and I got to marathon this ride over 20 times. The drop has armed sea level ejector airtime, and each airtime hill is equally on par with airtime pops on an RMC. During the twister section, the track had a bit of shimmy, but it actually improved the ride experience in my opinion, and adds a mix of variety to an otherwise airtime-filled ride. Last of all, the finale is one of the best on any coaster. You get absolutely thrown out of your seat, and the last airtime hump before the brakes have the sharpest pop. It's honestly sad that no other park has installed another one of these Chance Hyper GTXs, especially speaking of the fact that those are decently affordable coaster models. Number 19, Flight of Fear at Kings Island and King's Dominion. I genuinely don't understand why nobody talks about this ride or ranks it higher. What I love about this indoor coaster is how it throws you around through repeated intense inversions and wicked lateral twists. The launch is also surprisingly forceful too. I'm a digger for indoor coasters, mostly because I sense the energy they give out that I just cannot describe. Going through all these intense inversions and lateral twists, while the track is rattling in a perfect amount, is an experience hard to get enough of. The version in Kings Island and Dominion are technically the exact same ride, but I slightly prefer the Kings Island version, because the track is slightly bumpier, which in my opinion, enhances the thrill and joy of the ride experience. The lights and music also enhance the experience by adding an excitement factor. Call me crazy, but this is by far my second favorite ride at Kings Island, and my second favorite indoor roller coaster, period. Number 18, Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. The one word I'll use to describe this ride is rapid fire. The front row is actually superior seat on this ride. Although you don't get the whip on the drop, you get everything else. You get an abrupt pop of ejector airtime on the apex of the first hill, and each airtime and lateral moment feels stronger in the front. The mini airtime pops are mixed in with the lateral twist, so every slight airtime moment is paired with an amazing lateral jolt. The final turn into the brakes has surprisingly strong laterals, one of the strongest on any roller coaster. This is also the smoothest wooden coaster I've ridden. It still had a bit of wooden coaster crackle, but in my opinion, it enhances the ride and makes it feel like a better wooden coaster experience. After all, if this coaster was glossy smooth, it wouldn't be as fun. Number 17, Magnum XL-200 at Cedar Point. I used to hate this ride for the violent, thigh-crushing airtime hills at the end of the layout, but after riding it again in 2022, I was pleasantly surprised to find out that it easily made my top 20. There's something about this ride's bumpiness that makes me put a smile on my face. The first half of the ride doesn't have anything special, but the second half of the ride in the Magic Seat is what takes it from a top 39 coaster to a top 20 worthy coaster. On the return run, being shaken around by the track, with the laterals throwing you side to side of each track profiling imperfection, while at the same time being violently ejected out of your seat inside a loud tunnel, is a truly exciting and stimulating experience. And in terms of the violent triangular airtime hills, it's the second strongest airtime I've experienced on a roller coaster. The airtime sure does bang up your thighs due to how strong it is, but that's the whole point of the thrill, and I absolutely love it. Number 16, Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion. The only thing this ride really does is airtime, but it does an amazing job at it. Even though there really isn't any individual airtime moments that stand out, each airtime moment just blends in with the others. The ride just feels like a rapid-fire succession with airtime moment after airtime moment. This coaster is definitely one that would make my thighs sore. Is it the best RMC out there? I don't think so, but this one is unique in a way that the only element is airtime, and so is another RMC that will be coming up next soon on this list. Number 15, Jersey Devil Coaster at Six Flags Great Adventure. This may be a surprising pick that I'm putting this above Twisted Timbers, but I feel like JDC overall has more variety and a more diverse ride experience. While Twisted Timbers primarily focuses on airtime, Jersey Devil has one of the best first drops I've ever experienced, fantastic whip and hang time during the 0G roll and exits of the 0G rolls, positive Gs on the valleys, and the drop off the mid-course has a special kink to it. While it drops you, it sharply throws you to the left at the same time as you get violently thrown out of your seat. The only downside to this coaster that I find is the awkward seating and vest restraints. People complain about comfort collars, but I honestly find these restraints to be a lot more tight and restricting on my chest. Putting that aside, Jersey Devil is an underrated coaster that pulls a wide variety of forces that perfectly makes a diverse and intense coaster. Number 14, Storm Runner at Hershey Park. For a while, I preferred Kingda Ka to this, but after riding Storm Runner on 2 separate visits this year, I've realized the much more complete ride experience that Storm Runner delivers. I know I use absolutes a lot, but I am certain when I say this is my favorite and most forceful launch I have ever experienced. And yes, that includes Kingda Ka and TMNT Shellraiser. This launch is currently the only launch that drops my stomach, and the way it pushes you into your seat shocks me every time. I do prefer the front row in Storm Runner, because that's where you feel the maximum speed, and every entry into each element has a surprising pop of ejector airtime. The last few turns and whip at the end remind me of the turns on Maverick. Overall, Storm Runner is my favorite hydraulic launch coaster, and my second favorite ride at Hershey Park, but that may change when Wildcat's Revenge opens this year. Number 13. Icebreaker at SeaWorld Orlando. This Premier Rides multi-launch coaster absolutely exceeds expectations. I don't know who came up with the fact that this is a family coaster, but these are some of the most extreme elements you can find on any roller coaster. The launches aren't very forceful, but each time the train crosses the airtime bumps during the swing launch sequence, the pop of airtime gets stronger every single time. And then when you're going forwards the second time over the airtime hill leading into the top hat, oh my gosh, you get absolutely ejected up and out of your seat. This airtime moment is less sustained and doesn't last very strong, but its quick and violent nature is absolutely shocking. Every other small twist and hill on this coaster has a sharp and violent pop of ejector, even more than most RMC coasters and more than you can find on most coasters. This is by far my favorite Premier Rides coaster, and it's not even close. I don't think SeaWorld expected Icebreaker to come out as intense as it is, especially for the target demographic of a family coaster. But hey, as an enthusiast, I'm not complaining. Number 12. Wicked Cyclone at Six Flags New England. This moved down a bit in my rankings, especially since the coasters I've either ridden or re-rode afterwards are just better in my opinion. But that does not take away from how insane of an RMC coaster Wicked Cyclone really is. The drop may look small and not as steep as some other RMCs, but the amount of power and whip you get in the back row is even better than the drop on Steel Vengeance if you ask me. And yes, you heard it right. This drop absolutely flings you and you get strong ejected airtime paired with that stomach dropping feeling I always talk about. The bottom of the first overbank turn gives surprising positive Gs, and a double down gives amazing ejector airtime, especially on the second drop. And this ride features one of the most aggressive moments of ejector airtime I have ever experienced, that being the small outer bank turn before the 0G roll. Speaking of that, both 0G rolls have fantastic hang time. This is one of those RMCs that still specialize in airtime, but also delivers a more complete ride with positive Gs, strong laterals, and some of the best hang time out there. I consider Wicked Cyclone to be a miniature Steel Vengeance, and many people would agree with me. Number 11. Railblazer at California's Great America. I haven't been to California in a while, so I may not remember this ride as well, but all I remember is that every hill, twist, and drop delivered violent thigh-crushing ejector airtime that bent my spine. The pacing on these raptors feel completely fake and almost illegal, with how fast the ride takes on each element. Number 10. X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain. I barely remember anything about this ride, because I did this even longer ago than Railblazer. All I remember was being bombarded with insane G-forces, and finding my stomach flipping during the entire ride. All of those sensations caused me to absolutely laugh and have a great time during the entire ride. The drop is also weird but insane. It flips you onto your stomach and drops your stomach so strong to the point where you feel all the blood rushing into your stomach. It's sad the only similar ride to this is Ejunaika at Fuji-Q Highland. And let's be honest, I don't think I'll find myself in Japan anytime soon. Number 9. El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure. It's honestly very unfortunate what has happened to this coaster over the past 2 years, and I can only hope that Six Flags will figure out what exactly needs to be done with the ride to bring it back to its former glory, which is an elite wooden coaster with the rare kind of ejector airtime, an insane first drop, and one of the best wooden coaster experiences you could find anywhere. I only have 2 problems with this ride. 1. How rough it's gotten over the past year, and especially on the turnaround and the bottom of the Rolling Thunder Hill, where it almost feels like your spine is being compressed into half by a hydraulic press. The other problem I have are the dead spots on the turnaround, the return run, and the twister section at the end. I can look past that, because all the good elements in El Toro are really good. I'm talking elite, something you cannot find anywhere else. So it more than cancels out the dead spots of the ride. On a drop in the back row, you slowly levitate out of your seat in the beginning, and then once you hit the apex of the drop, you hit your maximum level of ejector, which hits hard. The next 2 camelbacks deliver some of the most unique and extreme ejector airtime you can find on any roller coaster. And the Rolling Thunder Hill, although not nearly as strong as in 2021 and the years prior, flips my stomach with how strong the negative Gs are. Oddly enough, El Toro was basically a walk-on all year every time I visited Great Adventure in 2022, before it had its second accident. So I rode El Toro at least over 10 times every visit, so my tolerance for roughness has gotten significantly stronger. The reason El Toro is still in my top 10 is because of its unique and legendary first drop, amazing sustained ejector camelbacks, and the Rolling Thunder Hill. Number 8. Space Mountain of Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom. I don't think any of you have ever seen this on an enthusiast top 25, but here it is. There's always a first. I think the reason people forget about and underrate this coaster is because it's in Disney World, which has the reputation of being more family and theme oriented, not really oriented for the extreme thrill-seeking demographic. If you told me this coaster only goes around 26 miles per hour, I would have never believed you. This ride feels like a speed machine, and rocketing through support beams filled with beautiful disco lights and energetic music and sound effects, with the perfect amount of bumpiness on the track, makes for one of the most exciting experiences in the world. This is very similar to Magnum, how the track feels a little bumpy, but the bumpiness is paired with some of the strongest laterals and sharpest moments of ejector, and on Space Mountain, it's indoors, so it makes it so much better. The pop into the second brake run is one of my favorite airtime moments out there, and each drop, twist, and turn has a fantastic bite to it. This ride is non-stop action from when you disengage from the lift hill all the way until you hit the final brakes. And by the way, the holiday overlay with the flashing lights and loud rock music actually makes it feel faster and more intense, even though ironically, the more vivid lights light up the track more than the normal version. And trust me, this is hard to explain, but the way the lights reflect onto the support beams in the normal version cannot even be seen on John Y. Chen's extreme low light videos. You really need to actually ride it and see for yourself how everything looks in person, and it will shock you how different the lights and supports look in person from on low light POVs. Once you ride it, you'll understand. Number 7. Maverick at Cedar Point. I finally got to revisit Cedar Point this year, and although this is no longer my number 1 like it was in my last top 25 countdown, I still have nothing against this ride and absolutely love its style and elements. A lot of new generation Intamin Blitz coasters are more graceful with less rapid fire elements, but Maverick is more on the I-305 side of things when it comes to intensity. The first drop absolutely throws you out of your seat and flips your stomach into your throat. And the switchback turns throw you side to side with its wicked laterals. The camelbacks have spine-lifting ejector airtime. The launch is one of the best LSM launches on a roller coaster, and each turn and transition has insane amount of forces coming from every department. When I rode this in 2018, I was so blown away that it immediately became my number 1. The reason it's dropped so much in my rankings is because since then, I've ridden so many new coasters that I just found to be a lot better and more insane than Maverick. That being said, the fact that this is still in my top 10 means that I find it elite and one of the best multi-launch coasters out there in my opinion. This doesn't have to do with the ride itself, but Maverick is definitely one of the most unreliable rides that I know of. The ride was almost always down while I went to Cedar Point, and I've seen so many videos on YouTube and posts on Reddit about this ride's unreliability, so it does seem like a consistent problem with Maverick. My guess to why is due to cost savings, and who thought you can start with cost savings and corner cuttings on an Intamin coaster? Number 6. VelociCoaster Islands of Adventure. When I talk about a graceful multi-launch coaster but at the same time it has rapid fire elements, I'm talking about VelociCoaster. This ride isn't known for its launches, it's more so known for its unique ride layout, theming, and elements. The whole ride is fun the entire way through, but there are 2 elements that are so spectacular that stand out to me most out of everything else this coaster has to offer. The drop off the top hat and the Mosasaurus roll. The drop off the top hat has some of the best sustained ejector airtime out there, if you're sitting in the back row. In the front row, you will get a sharp and violent pop of ejector while cresting the top hat, but in the back, you get the same amount of airtime on the drop off the top hat, except it's sustained for so much longer, which makes it feel like your throat is being separated from the rest of your body. The Mosasaurus roll feels like you're being forcefully dragged into the water. This element isn't as whippy and fast as others describe it, but the laterals more so gracefully whip you 360 degrees while giving strong sustained ejector airtime simultaneously. The other elements have some great whip, laterals, and a strong pop of airtime here and there. Something weird I've noticed with the second launch is that LSMs vibrate so strongly to the point where it tickles my legs. Can anyone watching this video tell me if they've noticed that tickling sensation on the second launch? Because I've never heard anyone say a word about it. The second launch is also more powerful than the first launch, with its tickling sensation, powerful motor noise of the LSMs, and the start of the launch has some decent kick to it. Number 5. Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. For a while, I preferred Maverick over Steel Vengeance, but most recently when I visited Cedar Point again, I preferred Steel Vengeance more this time. Although Maverick has more variety with ejector airtime, a spectacular first drop, positive Gs, and bone-crushing laterals, Steel Vengeance's rapid-fire nature makes it rank slightly higher than Maverick. Most enthusiasts still have this as their number 1, and that's just something I really don't understand. This ride mostly specializes in airtime and whip. The first drop really isn't anything special, and to be honest, Most RMCs have stronger first drops. However, the really good airtime moments are really good. The first Camelback gives amazing sustained flow to airtime and laterals combined due to the minimal banking, and the giant outer bank airtime hill, known to be as legendary among coaster enthusiasts, gives this unique sensation of airtime where you're floating out of your seat to the side and then you get thrown to the side again on the exit of the element. The rest of the ride is non-stop action. You get ejector after ejector after ejector and get whipped side to side for the rest of the ride. It feels like the fun never ends in the second half, and the finale of consecutive ejector airtime hills is a sweet end to the non-stop action. Watch out, because the line for this thing is one of the longest amusement park lines I have ever seen, and it could sometimes become even longer than Hagrid's on Universal's busiest days. Number 4. Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion. This is absolutely the most intense roller coaster I have ever experienced in terms of positive G-forces. When I first rode this in 2021, the turn didn't feel as forceful as I expected it to be, but when I rode it again in the fall of 2022, the turn definitely held up to what everyone was saying it was. The drop is average, and I would say it's on par with something like Millennium Force, but the turn that proceeds afterwards literally makes it feel like the blood is rushing all the way down to your feet, and it makes me see a white screen and sparks every single time. The giant airtime hill is super underrated, and doesn't only have flow to airtime, but it has strong sustained ejector airtime that lasts all the way through. The rest of the ride has a relentless sense of speed and throws your body around like a rag doll, and you get fantastic lateral whip on those switchback turns, which I consider the third strongest moment of laterals on any coaster. The second airtime hill is trimmed, so it's not really anything special, but the final snappy turn is insanely whippy. In fact, it's the strongest lateral moment of the entire ride. The biggest surprise for me is that last turn into the brakes. You get some wild ejector airtime paired with spectacular laterals, and it hits hard. Number 3. Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens Tampa. I have visited Tampa so many times this year, and went to this park every single time. When I have gone on several off-season weekdays this year, Iron Gwazi was a complete walk-on during some parts of the day, so I have marathoned this thing to oblivion. This ride gets straight to the point and every single element hits so hard. The first drop is definitely the best first drop on an RMC I have ever experienced, delivering spectacular ejector airtime and a powerful stomach-dropping sensation. The valley of the drop has fantastic positive Gs, and the Outer Bank airtime hill after the drop is honestly better than the one on Steel Vengeance. The strength of the airtime on this one is the same, but the way it whips you in and out of the element on Iron Gwazi is so much better. The next valley also has spectacular positive Gs. The death roll has fantastic sustained hang time and laterals. The overbank has amazing laterals throwing you in and out, and the wave turn is the best part of the ride, absolutely sending you to the side and out of your seat. Every other moment on the ride has out of this world ejector airtime, and that final mini drop is so good that it ends the ride with a bang. Every time I ride this, and I've ridden it a lot, I sit on the brake run in absolute shock, and always end up needing to take a mind breather. Number 2. Pantheon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. This is probably the highest you'll see someone rank Pantheon, but I had a thing for this ride even before I first rode it. When I first saw POVs of Pantheon ever since it first opened, I loved the sound of the LSMs, with the grunting and swirling sounds it makes. The swing launch sequence also looked unreal to me, and I always thought of Pantheon as a compilation of every coaster enthusiast's favorite elements. A zero-G roll with fantastic hang time, off-axis bunny hills, a swing launch sequence is violent and borderline lethal ejector airtime, a spectacular sustained ejector drop off the top hat. I mean, the drop off the top hat in the back row is even stronger and more sustained than on VelociCoaster. I choked on it because it felt like my throat was being separated from my neck. The outer bank is just as good as Steel Vengeance if you're sitting in the front row. The Zero G stall is by far the best Zero G stall I've ever experienced. The wave turn is also amazing too. I know I keep coming back to this, but the sound of the LSM motors really hype me up and make the ride experience so much more energetic, which makes me laugh and put a smile on my face. And call me crazy, I feel like the lack of theming makes the ride better for me. The whole vibe I get from the ride is a peaceful one, because it's plopped onto a large field adjacent to a farm, and smelling the scent of the farm blowing into your nose during the ride is so peaceful. And yes, this is definitely one of the more graceful Intamin multi-launches, but that's not a bad thing. This ride just gives me such a special energy and vibe that no other coaster does, and I really can't describe it. This and number 1 are so close. I'm saying really close, almost to the point where I can technically declare them as a tie. But slightly edging out Pantheon for my number 1 is none other than Skyrush at Hershey Park. How is this coaster even legal? It literally has every single aspect I crave in a roller coaster. This is by far the best first drop ever. I am not exaggerating this time. The drop starts by giving you strong sustained flojecta airtime, and then all of a sudden, halfway down the drop, there's a sudden bang that absolutely slams you forward into your lap bar out of nowhere, and it's such a fun kink. This makes Skyrush's drop not just my favorite first drop, but my favorite element on any roller coaster I've ridden in my life. Every single turn and valley has wicked positive G-forces that cause me to ultra gray out every single time, and both camelbacks have insane sustained ejector airtime, and the open restraints make it so easy to experience the full insanity of the airtime. Last of all, this coaster has the strongest laterals on any roller coaster, with the stangle dive and switchback turn absolutely slamming you to the side of your seat on the wing seats extremely sharply, especially the final switchback on the back left wing seat, which absolutely slams your entire upper body to the side. This coaster is every coaster enthusiast's favorite aspect of a roller coaster, and has the best of each aspect. It really seems like Skyrush was designed as a perfect machine for coaster enthusiasts. And in terms of the restraints, what's everyone talking about? Like seriously, these restraints are better than some RMC restraints. Yes, it does get a bit tight after a couple rides, but it's really nothing for me, and the minimalistic design of the restraints makes it so much easier to feel the maximum level of ejector airtime. These are my top 25 roller coasters as of 2022. I know this is a lot for my first video in a couple of months, and I hope you enjoyed it. I will definitely be making a lot more videos after this, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and see you all next time.